And we're live. Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Abel Gonzalez. I'm a Senior Director of Product Marketing for the observability side of Sumo Logic. And I'm joined here with my colleagues from Sumo. Dana, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, folks. Dana Torgersen, Director of Product Marketing for Security here at Sumo.
Great to see you. And Stefan, I think you are on mute. So this is live, so it's all great.
All right, Stefan
There we
Zier,
go.
Chief Architect at Sumo Logic. Been here a little while, just almost 12 years.
Awesome. Well, great to see you again. And we are here today. We're talking about this concept around cloud native. What are the benefits? What does it mean? And having our cloud architect is really, really fun because we have some questions for you. Sumo Logic, we are cloud native. We were born in the cloud. And I think we're one of the earliest adopters around that. So Stefan, can you talk a little bit about the design decisions and what that cloud native has brought us as far as benefits?
Sure. So Sumo Logic is, so cloud native in a sense that it is part of the origin story of the company. The founders worked at a very similar company before that, did an SIM product. I worked there as well. But it was an on-prem, single tenant monolithic product. And we all went and saw Werner Vogel's talk at Stanford in 2008 and had this sort of big light bulb moment of, hey, this is a completely different way of building an application, delivering an application. And this is such a powerful set of tools that AWS and other public clouds make available to us that it lets us build software in a very, very different way, and that eventually led to Sumo Logic being founded, and so it was always built around this notion of being sort of a SaaS only pure play cloud model. Back in the early days, there weren't a lot of blueprints you would just go and copy. So a lot of things we had to kind of discover on our own. We
You were
did
making the blueprints,
microservice.
right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
One fun story is we basically did microservices about 2 years before that term was coined as a name, and then when we heard it, we were like, that's sort of what we've been doing, plus minus. We didn't call it that, but we broke down the application into these individual bits that can scale individually and so forth. But so the reason we thought this was much better as a way of delivering software was twofold, right? One, as a consumer, in the early 2000s, we had all gotten accustomed to using things like Gmail and sort of Salesforce and all of these like SaaS applications, but there wasn't really a successful product in this space that was delivered as a SaaS, and so we saw the opportunity there. And then more selfishly, from a software engineering perspective, the prospect of not having to worry about the last 10 versions we shipped in the last 10 years because someone out there is still running it, that just seemed very attractive because it let us move a lot more quickly if we didn't have to backport things, and if we didn't have to worry about customers running all these old versions, if we didn't have to worry about how do we encourage customers to upgrade to a newer version, if we're sort of in control of that. To this date, at any given time, there's exactly one version of Sumo Logic running in the world.
Yeah.
And that's like just a super attractive thing to like people who work on the software delivery side of things.
I can imagine that the whole versioning is, I've been in the performance management space for over it. Yeah, I'm not going to say because then you're going to start counting my age. But I have been at companies where they had their on-prem and then they had to move it to the cloud, and that is not cloud native. And it's just managing all these different versions where you can't upgrade because they're all single tenant. You have to do those rolling upgrades. And as a product marketer, the benefits for me here at Sumo is that things launch and I don't have to wait for that upgrade cycle to happen. I can just talk about the new feature right away because it's available to all of our customers. So that makes my life easy. That's one of the benefits of cloud native is I can market a lot faster and deliver the value to the customers just very quickly. And I know that from the security side, I mean, Sumo is a very, very secure platform in and of itself, as well as a security provider. So Dana, I don't know if you have any thoughts or any questions that you want to ask Stefan around that.
Well, I've got tons of questions, but to dovetail to the immediacy and the continuity and the continuous development of that platform, there's no button to click on to see a version number. And I know that I'm excited as a marketer because when we talk to customers, we get to proudly tell them that you have the latest feature. I mean, you're not like a Splunk or some other product where you're dealing with on-prem or cloud hosted or cloud sorta, and you're actually back on a version 7, version 8. Oh, we got to plan for an outage if we don't have time for that, and we don't know what's going to break when we change things. And we're also on the security side with our threat content engineering team. We're pushing threat content updates, rules, and stuff for our Cloud SIEM and Cloud SOAR. We're pushing stuff Tuesdays and Thursdays, on and on and on. So every customer, thanks to multi-tenancy, they're all on the same platform. So a question for you, Stefan, would be: A, how'd you do that? And no, to be seriously though, the elasticity alone, the scale to be able to handle all that ingest coming in, take that data, and you've given us the horsepower to then process that data and analyze that, especially selfishly for me, from a security lens. I mean, how the heck was that done in the past? Because it seems so stark to me, the way things would have been and the way that now we've built this with what, running natively in AWS for 12 years now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think we have really benefited from the fact that we thought about these things from the ground up. Like we never wandered this path where we had, a single tenant version of Sumo Logic and then later had to worry about making it multi-tenant. No, it was multi-tenant from the very first day. Okay. Right. And that, if you build with that assumption, you build it in a very different fashion, right? You worry about how do I make sure that, people's data streams stay separate? How do I manage resources in a fair way across these different customers, and so that one doesn't overrun the other? And all of those things are nearly impossible to retrofit into any mature application after the fact, right?
Yeah.
And we've seen that to a degree in prior lives, where we at least sort of the design sessions around how do we retrofit multi-tenancy and how do we retrofit a scale-out architecture to a monolithic system, and it just ends up being such a tremendous big mountain of work that it never gets started or it never gets completed. I know some of our competitors are on their second or third attempt at to the cloud at this point, and that they're pretty formidable competitors with good products, and yet they're struggling to do this. So this is really, really difficult to do after the fact, right? The other thing, looping back to security a little bit more, is in the early days in 2010, when we would talk to customers about sending their log data into the cloud, sending their metrics into the cloud, that was not a common thing back then, right? And so there were a lot of objections that we needed to overcome around establishing trust with customers, and we did that by being very sort of investing a lot very early on in securing the platform and having layered defense for the platform, where yes, we have authentication, but we also have, the best possible TLS, implementation you can run, and on and on and on, right? And so and not only did we do that, but we communicated that to customers openly. Here's what we're doing to secure your data. Here's how we encrypt it. We have daily rotating customer specific keys, and on and on and on.
Yeah.
And then later, as the business grew, and as we got into wanting, things like PCI compliance, FedRAMP compliance, those early investments paid off in spades, because we had just a really strong foundation that we built to enable a genuinely secure platform. And so, almost kind of a positive to have started when we started, and then sort of the climate when we started, that got us to over-rotate almost for a company our size back then on all the security controls.
Yeah, I remember my data in the cloud, like I can't see it. I'm not going to put it there. So it's really amazing the level of security that we've been able to achieve.
Yeah.
And especially now, I think, like you said, this was 10 years ago. I imagine these days, when I talk about our products, like it's not so much of an issue anymore of look at all these attestations. We're great. We're secure. And I think that's like when I start thinking of like the cloud native and this digital transformation journey that we've been through, it's kind of arrived now, because I remember like logging into my bank or logging into something. It's like, oh, your maintenance window is going to be at this point during the night, and you're not going to be able to access anything. And now if I ever see that message, like I get annoyed. Like, why? What are you doing? Like, this is not how modern applications.
Yeah, no, we're past that. And in full transparency, there was a time at Sumo when we did have maintenance windows. Back in the early days.
Do. Yeah.
Yep. And it is easier in retrospect to design around not having maintenance windows from the start. It's again same thing, a little bit more upfront investment in building the system so it can be upgraded without downtime.
Mm-hmm.
But it was much harder to retrofit that into a system that had the assumption that you could take downtime. And so if I were to build another system like Sumo today, I would make sure I consider that from the start to make sure every service can be restarted and upgraded without incurring downtime. And there's a lesson learned in there. We turned the corner several years ago now, but I would prioritize that differently.
Yeah. So switching a little bit of a topic around the cloud native, and I know that a lot of people might be listening to us going like, hey, I'm going to be on this journey, digital transformation, I have my little legacy monolith, and how am I going to sort of address it? But I think in some of the areas that people may not be thinking about is like, what does this cloud native do to the process and the people and the culture? Because you can't have old IT running cloud native with those sort of overly complicated, and it has to be like much more nimble. Did you see that here at Sumo, or like in other places that you've talked about? Like, what does security mean to the company now?
Yeah.
What does like observability and reliability mean within those teams?
Right. We built a culture at Sumo around the developers who build the software running their own software and securing their own software, and we train them. When we hire, when we recruit, we tell them up front, this is part of your job. You're on the hook for delivering our service. You don't write code and lob it over a wall. That's sort of a very, very old school model, right? And we have benefited from that, like because everything is designed to have new software flowing to customers on an ongoing basis and additional value flowing customers on an ongoing basis, we had to reinterpret some, sort of models that people had put in place for traditional, shrink wrap software or on-prem software, things like change control, right? Where in the olden days, you would have like every other week a meeting of the change management board, and you would go through the list of changes and say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no.
Yep.
That doesn't work in a world where you ship software multiple times a day.
Yep.
And so we've interpreted that in a way where you still get the same benefit of the change being reviewed and double checked by a group of people and that being documented, but it happens in minutes to a small number of hours in almost all of the cases, and it's done supporting using Slack and a chatbot that I wrote a long time ago, and Jira, and sort of just a more modern way of interpreting the same thing, and that goes for many things. And the most visible, or the times when it's most visible that were kind of different in that way is when we talk to compliance people and auditors, where they're like, invite me to your change management meeting, let me attend it, and we're like, we don't have one. Here's a Slack conversation, right? And all the way down to what kind of lock does your data center use on its doors? And we're like, we don't have one. Like, and then this is actually another big benefit of building on top of a public cloud like AWS. They have solved a ton of the heavy lifting, not just on racking, stacking servers, running like all of those things, but also security and compliance things. They have damn good doors on, damn good locks on their doors to the data center, but we don't need to worry about it. We just get a document from them and hand it over to the auditors, and the auditors at this point have seen that document a million times over because everyone runs on AWS. So it becomes a very easy thing to do a lot of the lower level compliance things, and then it just becomes about the application.
Great. Yeah, I know I've been like a chatterbox, so I'll let Dana maybe chime in here.
Yes.
Around like our security side of things and how those are also like cloud SIEM, like it's no on-prem areas.
Yeah, our solution built on the platform for our cloud SIEM and our cloud SAR offerings. Yeah, there's no on-prem, there's no going back. And with all this talk and hearing the stories about all the data coming in, that's got to be hard for folks that are still on-prem to be able to take all this new SaaS and cloud-based world and get it into their platform and then make sense of it. And I know we've spoken to customers. We've got a lot of organizations and enterprises that have come to Sumo for that, our keen ability to be able to pull that data in. So is the secret, Stefan, is it because of the hosted collectors and the good effort that was built in developing those, so folks aren't having to do all these installed collectors and agents? Or is there some other, is it the APIs and the REST APIs fully documented that folks can get their hands on and instrument any darn part of the product anywhere? Or is there some other secret to how we're able to get that data in and make sense of it for folks, especially for security and observability?
I think that's part of it. When the data is somewhere where Sumo can reach it, we can get it from there without you having to install and manage a piece of software, which is a similar problem from running an on-prem piece of log management software like Splunk or Elasticsearch or any of those things, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Their collection pieces you also have to operate, right? And where we can, from S3 or other APIs collect the data, we bias towards doing that for the customer in our backend and managing that. I think the fact that there's a team of experts on our end running this and managing availability of it and really monitoring the hell out of it. Yeah. We have a pretty damn good observability solution in-house we use our own product, of course, for that.
Drink our
And
own
so
champagne. So
we drink our own champagne, and
That is
drink our
true.
own
that,
champagne.
you know, that combined with the fact that it's a SaaS gives us complete visibility into what's going on in the system, what customers are experiencing. We now manage SLIs and SLOs down to individual customer levels, where we say, you know, oh, customer XYZ was having some ingestion lag this week. Let's go debug that. Let's go figure out how to make it better. Most of the time, customers don't even know that we've made something better for them, but it's a continuous background activity that keeps on making things better for them, right? And
Yeah.
that, you know, involves scaling, that involves you know, managing collection for them, data fidelity. It's you know, there's a lot behind the scenes going on that you don't have to worry about anymore as a customer, that just magically works.
Yeah.
And you know, I often have conversations with customers where they're like coming up and they're like, you know, your product just works, right? And
Yep.
you know, this is what people experience with a lot of other SaaS products. You know, Gmail just works, Salesforce just works. I don't have to worry about anything.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
have to even know how it works, and behind the scenes, how it works actually changes over time.
Yeah,
like
under the
how
hood,
we've
yeah.
implemented the collection stuff changes and evolves, and we've done some pretty big sort of generational rip and replace things behind the scenes without anyone on the customer side, you know, knowing or noticing beyond that, you know, something got better in terms of quality of service, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a big plus, and that's not something you do in an on-prem situation, where you know, there's constant activity and making things better behind the scenes, right? In an on-prem world, it's already difficult to even know what's going on because you don't get to see that data, generally speaking, because you know, the application may run behind a firewall.
I think
You don't
I
get to
lost your
interact with
audio.
it as a vendor.
Oh, there.
Mine?
Sorry, it just cut out for a little bit. It could have been me. Yeah, that's the new distributed world.
Yes. Technology.
You know,
I know that we could like chat about this topic for like hours. But like one of the things that you mentioned, I think is important. Is like the cloud native like allows you to just delight your customers without them knowing that you're doing things for them. It just scaled. It just worked. It just got upgraded. They just got the latest thing. And I think that's super important when talking about the benefits of cloud native. And I know that we've chatted for a bit, but Dana, do you want to tell them what we have planned?
Yeah, I want you folks to check out our post. We've got a webinar coming up that we're hosting in a couple of weeks. You can hear from all three of us, and we're going to also bring in Manny Lopez to help moderate the event. It's titled Secure and Optimize Cloud Migration Using a Modern Security and Observability Platform. Hint, it's probably Sumo Logic. So we encourage you folks to check that out and join us for that. And thank you so much for your time today, spending with us on this Geeks and Gurus event.
Awesome.